Enjoy the show.
Beaming at you from the depths of the internet.
This is the Temple of Geek podcast, your one stop for all things geek.
Hello and good afternoon, everybody. My name is Ron, and I'll be your host for this episode of Temple of Geeks podcast. This podcast has been around since 2012 or so. If you're tuning in, thank you and welcome back. Today's podcast, we're going to be discussing episode 8 of Star Trek Picard in this lovely third season. And this is it, folks. We're letting the last 3 episodes of this run series of Star Trek Picard. Joining me in today for this podcast, I have Sergio. Sergio, hello.
Hi. Pleased to meet you.
And
I'm pleased to be here.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us, Sergio. And the other guest joining us with us today is Daniel. Hello, Daniel. Welcome to the Temple of Geek.
Hello. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. All right. So, as I said, this is the last 3 episodes of Star Trek Picard. Before we get into that, for all of our listeners out there and for anybody watching on our social channels, give a little introduction to yourself and how you got into Trek. Sergio, let's start with you.
Well, I'm Sergio Rojo. I'm from Argentina, and I've been living here in LA since the last 2 years. I'm a diplomat and work at the Argentine consulate. And I got into Star Trek by stroke of luck, I think. I was watching TV back in Argentina. I was 8 or 7. Back in the day, we only had 4 channels. So I was turning into one of these old channels in Argentina. And my granddad told me, okay, wait. Watch this. And it was a scene from The Menagerie. I didn't know anything about the show, but I was hooked like in milliseconds. So from there, it's all history.
What was the scene in The Menagerie?
Oh, it was when they are leading, I think it was very end, when they are leading Captain Pike and Vina into the cave back after all of the things they have to go through. So I think it was pretty much the end. So it was a stroke of luck.
That's great.
Wow, that's great. Daniel, let's throw it to you. How did you beam into the Trek universe?
Well, it's a great story. So I live in Los Angeles as well. I work in marketing for the Fox network, and Star Trek is very much a part of why I chose to work in entertainment. And it really goes back to, I was thinking about this morning, I have been 4 years old, and I remember vividly seeing the image of Locutus of Borg at the end of the first part of The Best of Both Worlds, right? And I know that I knew what Star Trek was. This was, so I don't know if I'd seen other episodes because I don't remember. But I know that I also had seen Star Wars. And for me, that image... The other
Star franchise, yeah.
I thought, oh, this is like what happened to Darth Vader. Because in my mind, I knew that Darth Vader was a cyborg and he was the villain. And so I immediately just in my mind thought, oh, wow, this Captain Picard, he's the bad guy now, like Darth Vader, right? Like it was just this really sort of basic idea that my little kid brain completely grasped from the visual alone, And so that's my earliest memory. But I very soon after that, I must have seen The Voyage Home on VHS around that time, because I saw The Undiscovered Country in the theater, and I was 6 years old, right? That was 91, and I'd already seen Voyage Home, so I don't know when I saw that, but that was, to me, was like, oh, this is the next movie. Didn't know about Star Trek V at the time, but mercifully. But I like, oh, this is the next movie with these characters that I like, as this little kid. And so that's how it started. And in my house growing up, my dad was not a Next Gen fan. So it was a toss. It was an original series household for most of my young life. And I started sort of getting into the other series when I was a teenager and had a little more freedom to sort of find my own course, if you will.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing your stories. Daniel, I'm kind of like you. The only thing that's different, I would say, in regards to my origin stories into Trek was my experience of Trek was I was very young. First of all, I was a kid. I believe I was in, I want to say 7th grade when I got into Trek. I was really vague on where I actually began with the episodes, but I know that I grew up in the Next Generation era. So Star Trek Picard, Worf, Riker, and all the rest of those cast members. I'm just going to use my origin story, and I've been thinking about this a lot even before doing this podcast, that it was really Best of Both Worlds, the two-part series, that really two-part episodes, I'm sorry, that really got my attention into Trek, because I love the way that they did the special effects for those two episodes. I understood that there was a captain. I understood that there were commanding officers. I know that there was this dark thing going on. So I think the whole appeal of having a leading role in Picard, and then for him to become and transformed into this cyborg machine yet biological being, and the way that was done, and him attacking an affiliation that he's been with for so long, was just intriguing to me. That whole storyline, and just the tension that you have in the battle scenes amongst the characters. When I retrospectively, the handling of Riker is like I'm fighting my own captain who's been assimilated, so to speak, into the Borg terminology, who's been assimilated into this different culture, so to speak. And so that whole thing appealed to me. I got so attracted that I think I was time jumping, as a Trek reference, time jumping into different episodes prior, and then leading into the movies thereafter. So films wise, I was aware of Star Trek 4, The Voyage Home. I was aware of the motion picture. I was aware of The Wrath of Khan, although I didn't watch those movies like throughout. I was aware of those. But I became so much a fan that I do have a picture of me in uniform, in the TNG uniform, Next Generation era uniform, as captain. So I'm in the red uniform with the 4 pips on the collar, and because I was just in such admiration of Picard. So that's where I began. So I appreciate you guys sharing your stories, so all of us can just geek out.
Yeah, it's amazing that we have such a different experience watching the Best of Both Worlds, because you guys back in the day had to wait like 2 or 3 months between the end of season 3 and the beginning of season 4, and there was all this question about is Picard coming back or not. So I was robbed of all of that because I watched the end of season 3 one night, and the following night it was the first episode on season 4. So I was robbed of all the experience. So I didn't have to suffer if Picard was going back or not, because this was just there.
What's funny is I don't even remember if I saw the second part. You know, like It was one of those things that you were definitely aware of because it was in the pop culture. And that's the thing I don't think Star Trek has ever been more in the pop culture than it was then in the early 90s, you know? Mm-hmm. So like, and you're at school, like you could hear from other kids, like, well, this is what happened. You know, like it wasn't like, it was like people did know about it and they knew, oh yeah, they got him back. And, you know, they would tell you, you know, and that's how I learned about Terminator 2. Cause weirdly, all the kids in my first grade class saw Terminator 2. I don't know what world we were living in when 6-year-olds.
That is strange. That is very interesting. I said, what parents would allow their kids to watch Terminator 2?
They were telling me like this is what happened in the movie, and I didn't. But I thought it sounded awesome. But I didn't see it for another 10, 12 years. You know.
Interesting.
That's interesting. That's interesting. Yeah.
That's really fun.
I mean, complementing my Trek history, I can see that there is a huge difference between your history and my history, because back in Argentina, we didn't have anything. I mean, the scarcity of news about any Star Trek related show were nothing. I mean, it was the extreme. I mean, we don't know anything. That was during the 80s. In the 90s were different because we integrated with the world during the 90s. I don't go into politics, but it was a huge change.
It was definitely a venture, and it's something that Star Trek really applied into there.
Yeah,
Star Trek was really reflective of I think what was going on through those times, and a reflection of what history has shown us. Yeah. So I think getting into all of that, I understand what you mean by the politics involved.
In the 90s, we started to get more things. I mean, and then. Thank God some guy came out with the idea to have a whole network to run the whole Star Trek franchise. So Uniseries was the name of the network, and they played from TOS to I think Voyager, and that was just out I mean, I'm talking about early 90s, 94, 95.
Yeah, and Trek was kind of like during the 90s. That was in essence because obviously you had that's a huge time gap to have from the 60s of the
Yes.
original series.
Mm-hmm.
Fast forwarding, that's about like 30 years
Yeah.
until we got the new Trek because what season 1 of the Next Generation didn't come out until
87.
1987. So
Mm-hmm.
20 going to and obviously the more popular seasons got into the 90s, right? So that's why I
Yeah.
say 30 years later. Not discrediting, the first 2 seasons of Next Generation at all, but it was just during that time when everything got highlighted because now you got all the other series involved and all these new, basically Deep Space Nine and Voyager
Mm-hmm.
debuting during those periods. So since we're talking about Renaissance and Trek, let's start talking about Star Trek Picard. Now, obviously, we've watched the first 2 seasons. This third season is blew off already at full speed, warp speed, maximum warp, however you want to call it. So, what do you guys think about season 3 leading up to episode 8 so far? What characters have appealed to you? What arcs have you liked? What's your overview? Let me start this time with Daniel.
Well, let me just say this. The thing that blows me away after I finish like a new episode of Picard is this show feels so much like Star Trek as I remember it, to the point that I'll be watching it and I'll think of something, relevant to whatever's going on. And the character on screen will say what it was in my head, right? Like we've been living through this period of reboots and relaunches and reunions that are maybe the last 10 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
Usually, you have to do a little work in your head to sort of make what you're seeing make sense with what you remember, right? It's usually not quite right. It's there, but it's not there. This is like the opposite. This literally feels like, oh yeah, you guys are just, you came back to make the show. And I have to remind myself that 2 years ago, this was considered impossible, that this was considered, it would never happen, So that's the thing I want to say about Picard. And I think we should welcome our new guest.
Our new guest.
All right, at the top of the show. Oh, look at this. We have just joining us our third and final guest for the show, Jay, who is just joining us right now. Jay, we had just barely started where we're getting to talk about our overall view of season 8. So for those listeners and for those watching on our socials, Jay, welcome to the Temple of Geek podcast. As a first timer, I want to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself and how did you get into Trek? What is your origin story? As you have certain displays up there in your board, and it feels like you are in your own ready room right there. So tell us about your origin story.
Oh man, hey guys, sorry I'm late, but thanks for inviting me. Happy to be here, guys. Appreciate it, Ron. Well, I got into Trek. Man, my dad was into it. He was into TOS, obviously, and he would just have it on like every day. It was on obviously syndication, and it was Kirk. I got to know him a little bit. I was a little kid at the time. I think I was like maybe 4 or 5 years old, but the overall look of the show, all of that just has been seared into my memory as a kid. But growing up, what raised me was in elementary school and stuff was TNG. Just it's that franchise that really brought me into the entire sci-fi genre, and my entire life, sci-fi has always been my favorite. I love a ton of genres, but sci-fi is always on the top. It really welcomed me. I'll never forget, my parents took me to a birthday party. I think I was maybe 8. And on the TV, they had an episode, I think it was the Nth Degree, where Barclay gets shocked by something, and then he controls the whole ship, and he's at the end he's sitting there with these lights hitting him. It's great. And I remember just totally being, I was like a wallflower growing up. I was very introverted. I still kind of am. It's taking a lot to wipe my brow and be like, I'm actually on something. but I remember
add it to your resume.
Exactly. Sitting at this party, not talking to anyone, and just everybody's eating and talking. I'm just watching this episode as a 7-year-old, and just being completely brought in. to the episode, and that's one of my favorites of TNG. But when I got into high school, I really got more into Voyager was my show. When they released Voyager, I was going in I was a freshman in high school, and when it ended, I was starting my first year at UCLA in LA. I basically, like, my whole teenage life was Voyager, and my favorite episode has got to be Timeless. It's like all, the episodes that always like give me the feels are episodes where, the timeline it's an alternate timeline, and then at the end it's erased, it's gone, and it only happens in someone's mind, or it's just you see it, and then you get this perspective of the life that I'm living now, what it could have been if I had made another choice. Always love those episodes, always. So yeah, that's how I got into it. And then here, I met you guys at a really cool event at a nerdy bar, and just really enjoy meeting people that love the same things that I love. So thanks for having me.
So I have to understand. Tell us about this room in your house. I'm assuming this is your house. Tell us what its purpose is, and what you're running on these screens, these awesome LCARS graphics. Like, tell us everything.
Yeah. Wait. Hold on. I think he's he's got the uniform on. He's got the background on. He's got the LCAR system. So how he got from the future to 2023, he's a time traveler himself. So I question that. But yeah, go ahead, Jay. Take it away. Like, how did you get those displays?
I've always loved the aesthetic. Well, first of all, this room is my office in my house, and at one point, me and my wife shared it. And then when the pandemic hit, we were it was tough because everybody was on. So at one point, she's like, "I'm going to take the guest room, and you just have this room and just do what you want with it." And I said, "Are you sure?" And she's like, "Yes, I need my own space." And it was awesome because honestly, it's like my room again, like growing up. Like, I could put stuff up. My wife has her own, and she's a big Lord of the Rings fan. She's got a ton of Lord of the Rings stuff on there. So it's our own little caves here. And then, my favorite aesthetic of all of Star Trek has been LCARS. So, seeing it come back in Picard it just blows my mind. I've always wanted to be able to make some of those graphics and things, and now that they've got them on System 47 and stuff, I always just randomly put them on when people come to visit, and they're like, "What's that?" My props to legendary Michael Okuda for coming back to the season of Picard and just really bringing those designs back. That's all right.
At some point after the call, I'm going to ask you, Jay, to tell me how you're driving all these graphics. I want to know all the technical stuff, but don't need to do that now. But what you do need, though, is a little bar over there called 10 Forward, just in the back.
Oh, there we go. The sign.
We can all come to the ready room, and we can all have a drink.
You can all have Romulan ale.
I don't want to tell you about the other room I have.
Remember, that's still illegal. That thing is still illegal. The Romulan Empire is no longer around, but that thing is still illegal.
Forever.
Because of what it does to you. That's why it's illegal.
Of course.
Look. It's a 3rd century drink. Nobody has to worry about it. Nobody has to know. We can just shove that on. All right, so let's go back to bring our discussion. Daniel, thank you for sharing your. Did you? I know Jay had just jumped in, but Daniel, did you have anything to add? What you mentioned earlier overall about this season of Picard so far?
Yeah, let me just add. Overall, because I think we're still talking broadly. I'm watching through the Next Generation films again. They just come out on 4K, and even watching Generations, which is the only one I've gotten through so far. Having this season and having the story of this season and where the characters are, it even informs that, even having Picard get that message about Renee and Generations and be affected. And he says things to Troy like, "This is the end of my family line," which in 1994, maybe it sort of was like, oh, okay, cool. Now it's like, oh my God, he had a son later. He didn't know he was going to have a son. And when you think about the feelings he expresses in this show about having this son that he didn't know he had this son, and you look at these scenes where he's crying that he's not going to have a family, and he says to Beverly, you took this from me without even asking me. Like, it really works. It really works, and it really feels like this intended payoff. I mean, this great culmination to this storyline, and it's just mind blowing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Sergio, thank you, Daniel. Sergio, go ahead and share your thoughts on the overall season so far, standouts of story arcs, characters, lines. Go for it.
There's no secret that I love Picard. I mean, he's my biggest inspiration. I'm a diplomat because of Picard, and I was lucky enough to tell this to Patrick Stewart. And but this season, is the love letter to TNG that we all were asking for.
Yeah.
The first two seasons of Picard, I get it. They needed something different because otherwise Patrick would never got the green lighted this to say, okay, let's do this show. No, so they need to came out with a different story. Something. What was going on with this guy after all he had been through? It's fair enough, and we all were asking about that. What's going on with Picard after Nemesis? So we kind of get that idea. Season 2 was slightly better than season 1 for me. The whole arc, it was, as Daniel was pointed out, the whole idea was with Renee and the family Picard, with all the legacy leading to this third season, because as Daniel was saying, during generations, we learned that there were no more Picard than Picard himself. And now there is a new Picard.
Yes.
So
yes.
that's, that changed everything we have learned from Picard, because he, at least at the very beginning of season 1, you can see that he embraced his mortality and that he is the last Picard.
Right.
But when he discovered that he has a son now, the first thing that he said to Beverly is what Daniel pointed out. It's, you robbed me.
Right.
You robbed me. You deprived me from the opportunity of being a father of this kid.
Yeah. I believe that was the second episode this season.
I think it was, it was.
It was the third.
The third.
Okay.
17 seconds. Yeah.
Yeah. 17 seconds. You're absolutely right.
Which for me is the episode when we were lucky to see the best Riker.
That was
Jonathan Frakes on that episode. Completely knock it out of the park. It's amazing.
Phenomenal.
Yeah, and all in all, having seen the first 8, I can say that we had the best Riker ever. He is the best character.
Yeah. We don't have to see him. We don't have to see him cooking pizza anymore. So,
which I love that. I love the joke they made about that this last.
Nice. Very nice.
In terms of character, if I have to go one by one, it's gonna take me a lot. But I think that we have seen all the characters having their moment. I think it was on episode 2, the scene between Picard and Beverly. Amazing. When they are the two of them alone in sickbay. Then Worf and Raffi, perfect. the dynamic between Geordi and Data. Oh my god! I mean, Levar is amazing. It's a national treasure. I know that, but he is amazing. Yeah.
On so many levels. So many levels.
So many levels. Yeah.
So many levels. Yes, Jordy.
And there's some masterful producing they do where they make sure that they're not cluttering the episodes with too many characters.
Yeah.
So they introduce Geordi and we'll say Data, later. So now the first few episodes, you've got Riker, you've got Beverly, Picard, and you get to play the drama. Then they take Riker away. He's captured, right?
Yes.
And so now in that episode, it's Picard and Geordi. And we don't have to deal with, well, where's Riker and what's Riker going to say? Because he's been captured, right? And that's like great writing because it allows every character to have their moment. And it's fantastic.
Exactly. Yeah.
So great. It's so great. Jay, what's your overall take on season 3 so far?
Oh my gosh! I mean, what everybody's been saying, really. To Sergio's point, just this is the love letter. This is what everybody's been waiting for, and that is a well done send off to this crew. And we've just all wanted like a season 8 of TNG. I know I did. I love the ending of TNG where the camera lifts up while they're playing poker. It's wonderful, and then they skirt to the movies. But the ending of Nemesis, it was just like it was such a downer. I mean, I liked the movie, but it was such a downer. And seeing what they're doing here, and then just that almost last scene of episode 8 where they're all around the conference table again. It's like almost the exact same seating arrangement.
Oh, we're definitely gonna talk about that. That's definitely gonna be discussed more depth. And just I know that's a big part. That was a big part. So that was I have a joke about another franchise relating to that. But
oh, sweet. Yeah.
For me, I was about to scream something else. But I think let me rewind back before even watching this season. I want to go back to the initial announcements for this third season, because what I remember vividly is when they announced the casting and who's going to be included for Star Trek season 3, the flood and wave of responses of seeing the first promo posters for all the TNG cast members. I was literally, and I shouldn't have been on my phone, but hey, you know what? It just so happens. I was on my phone during work, and I got a little distracted. And when I saw those announcements come up on my feed, I literally wanted to yell. I was fidgety in the chair that I was working in. I was a kid in a candy store. So to see those characters come back, just mind-blowing, because I can only imagine what stories they're going to tell for this third season. And we're bringing the whole next generation cast back. Now, mind you, the only thing that was not revealed until the first, or I believe the first trailer for season 3 was we didn't see a character poster for Brent Spiner, who plays Data. And so they kept that purposefully and beautifully kept that a secret for so long until the initial trailers went out, was when he was obviously revealed to be Lore, because as you know from season 1, he died at the end, and wanted to live that life of being a human, and that was the supposed closing arc of the story, until we're like, nah, let's just bring him back in another way. They threw that out. Because you can't have a next generation cast without one of the most critical characters amongst the cast, which was Data. So going into this third season, I love every single character arc that's going on with this season. And let's not mention, I mean, we can talk about everybody, and that could be a whole nother podcast to talk about each and every character individually. But I think really the standouts to me have been, and I'll just talk about this briefly: Worf, Raffi, Seven, and the dipshit from Chicago, Captain Shaw. Yeah. And he's just been one that's just been like, you really want to yell at him, slap him. At least for me, I want to talk some sense into him, but he's that sarcastic, cheery guy in the turbo lift about having to just be like the textbook Starfleet officer, but he's doing it with so much ego and so much stress, and like he has a chip on his shoulder and can pull some strings into this whole season. And that's why I think the fan base just loves him so much, because you love to hate him and hate to love him as well.
He reminds me of the captain of the Excelsior in the Search for Spock. Do you remember the guy?
Yeah.
Yes.
He was really uptight.
With his little cane. His little
cane,
cane.
Feeling his nail all the time. Yeah. But he has that vibe. But I mean, I love that, which is his performance is amazing. I mean,
yes,
he's the best contrast to all the let's say braggadocio that Picard and Riker have all the time. I mean,
the feedback with each other, like bouncing off each other.
I mean, but he's like the guy that's saying, you know what? You cannot always get what you want.
Yeah. Kind of bring them down. Bring them. Yeah.
To the ground, yeah. I mean, they need somebody to say, hey, well, hold on. There is a textbook. We're gonna respect this book.
Yes,
and
he's that guy.
Well, and I think those two episodes, it was 3 and 4, 17 seconds and No Win Scenario, both directed by Jonathan Frakes. To me, those are so far my favorite episodes, and it shows off a lot of those things that you're talking about really well. And it's where Todd Stashwick has that great speech, and it all clicks for the character. And the character has such legitimacy, that question of like, why did they let Picard be a captain after Best of Both Worlds? And we all just kind of go, well, he wasn't him. We have all made a decision to say as a Federation, that wasn't him. That was the Borg. And it's like, that's a choice. It's not necessarily a fact. You could just as easily put him on trial because we know that they used his knowledge and we know that they took advantage of him. And a lawyer, like in Measure of a Man, could argue, no, he could have killed himself. They were able to access, all these secrets because he did nothing, and you could put him in prison. Right. So I love that you have this character who's been wounded by that choice. Calling it out. I loved the way Picard responded to it. I love that when Jack asks him, what's the toughest moment in your life? I'm sitting on the couch and I'm like, obviously when you were captured by the Borg. And he starts telling this story about the shuttle. And I'm like, what? Okay. No. And then Stashwick comes in and gives the whole thing. And I'm like, I love it because he's essentially saying what I'm saying, but it reveals that it was so horrible for Picard. He doesn't even think about it. When somebody asks him what was the most horrible situation you've been in, it's so removed from his mind, it's so repressed, it's so traumatic that I don't even go there when I think about my life, when I think about my history, right?
And what's interesting about that is Picard's reaction is different. That when Sisko confront him about Wolf 359. It's completely different. When Sisko told him, we met before and Wolf 359, he was like, oh, yeah, I know what you mean, but what do you want from that? I mean, what's your idea of telling me that? And he was taking a defensive posture. Whereas when Shaw confronted him about that, he was like, okay, let this guy.
It's such a different part of his life.
Yeah.
No, because in Emissary, Picard, he is a captain, and it's not that much time, and he's very much he's being challenged by Cisco in that moment.
Yes,
And so
exactly.
he's like kind of standing his ground. Whereas now it's 30 years later, it's his history, and it's not like he's not a captain. He has nothing to stand on here. He's literally across from a guy at a bar that he hurt a long time ago.
Jay, you were going to say something?
I was just going to vibe off what you guys were talking about in that, you go back to First Contact and, that first scene where he's in his when Picard is in his quarters, and, he has those flashbacks, and that Borg piece comes out of, and it's kind of a jump scare, but he was obviously still like dealing with the trauma of that experience.
Right.
And then we're faced with a captain who's sitting across at the bar, who has clearly is dealing with similar trauma, but from the receiving end, and the survivor's guilt is very strong, and telling that story, which I don't know if you saw the Ready Room, and he's talking about how they did not cut any of it, they just let it, and it was not it almost was cut. It almost
seems like. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. He just presented it in that undealt with trauma, I think that scene in the holodeck where Picard just lets him do it and does it, and then doesn't let Jack stop him from doing it, and he walks away kind of dejected, just dealing now with there are other people that were affected by the things that had happened during that time. So
and I love as much you can criticize this all you want, for anybody fan, you can criticize this all you want, but I think using the 10 forward bar as the environment and setup for these type of intimate discussions. Obviously, that's been a recurring theme when you have to isolate yourself from the rest of the crew, or let's have a side talk. Let's have a sidebar, and it always happens in 10 forward where you have these discussions, is where you kind of are dealing with. And Daniel, as you pointed this out, the reaction of the traumas from both Todd Stashwick character, Captain Shaw, and then you see Picard's reaction to it, because you knew that tension was so deep with, and I love this line where Captain Shaw said, and there was a Borg, and they gave him his name. His name was Locutus. I was like, ooh, that's a low blow. And you kind of felt that blowback from Picard. It was like, okay, nothing else needs to be said here. So he upped and left the room. He left the holodeck and be like, you know what, that's enough for me, because Picard knew that he's dealing with that trauma himself too. He's trying to recover from that, and essentially try to move on from that, but using that as a hook into his character. Obviously, there is a reason why this series is called Star Trek Picard, because it is addressing a lot of what has happened to his character, and I do like the way that was addressed in the 10 forward bar. And he was Shaw was just all out and blunt with it, right in front of the ensigns, right in front of our version of lower decks there on the Titan. Not comedic anyway, but you have the lower ranking officers on there, either ensign or lieutenants, that are watching this as it plays out, this whole argument between them in that bar.
And sorry to interrupt, but it was a nice
contract. Go ahead.
It was a nice contract between. I mean, you have that scene where Shaw, in front of this whole crew of ensign, was criticizing Picard's role in one of the deadliest battles that the Federation fought. And then if you
in front of his son, even in front of Jack,
in front of Jack, and you put it back to back with the other scene when he was being this cool admiral in front of a group of cadets that wanted to hear stories from this Federation legend or Starfleet legend, and it also in front of his son that was there waiting the right moment to approach him. So that two scenes for me were perfectly, and they are the yin and yang of the character.
Yeah, yeah. Talk about tension. Let's all now address the elephant in the room, which is episode 8. Episode 8 entitled "Surrender." Obviously, it's been fun looking at the names of the titles and obviously having to see them included in the title, the names of the titles of the episodes into the dialogue and into the script of each episode, basically. Um, 17 seconds was a great way to use that. And this episode was another great way to use that, surrender. So let me just take point on this one, that at the beginning I have Vatic, uh, Amanda Plummer's role as Vatic. I didn't like her in the previous episode, just because it just seemed like her lines were very very cartoony. It's like, I will get you, I will have my revenge, and blah 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 blah. Yeah, it's very cliche in terms of the dialogue of coming from a villain, and villain or our big bad, which obviously this episode brings into light something else, or even before that, the face, as the internet likes to call it. Um, when she starts harrowing and narrowing in on the ship and basically loving the ship. She loves the boatswain's whistle for apparent reason. She loves to hear her voice over the PA system, and she loves using that system so much that I kind of laugh at that whole thing. I find it humorous because she sounds like that one principal who's calling you to the office. In school over the PA system, and Jack, come to my office. Jack, come to the bridge. During that whole scene, but in a way that the really deep, dark, a sadistic side of her, and saying, let's take out their eyes, let's take out their ears. That whole thing, as I was watching this episode this morning, I'm like, the way they portrayed that, and in a very curious way, her orchestrating that with her hands as it fits music to her, was just scary. I legitimately felt scared during that opening sequence of this episode, and that was scary to me. I mean, you guys can feed off of that or bring up some other part of the discussion of your overall take of the episode.
Did you get some first contact vibes? As like when that was happening and these people were running away, and it's like
the shots of the Borg that they had in that movie. No, very much. And she was very. I was shocked, and I think we'll just go to. I'll just say this at the end. I was shocked that they killed her in this episode, and knowing that they did that, I love even more what they did with her in the episode. Right, by making her so brutal, and she's basically having these people killed, and she's sort of enjoying it and being gleeful about it. And that great scene when she shoots Tavine, but you think she's going to shoot the other, the crewman. All that's great, and then they launch her out the airlock, she shatters, and then they blow up the ship. Because I'm like, oh, she's a changeling, like she could just goo in space, and then the ship will pick her up, and it's like, even if she can. They've destroyed the ship. So even if she's actually still alive, she's just floating in the blackness of space. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, that's bold. So you're basically clearing the board. You're clearing the villain board going into the final 2 episodes. That was great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Overall takes on the episode. What have been your standout moments? Sergio, go for it.
Well, I mean, I'm going to sound repetitive, but I love the episode. I mean, the whole 8 for me it's get better and better, right? And but the whole first scene, I agree with Jay. It got all the first contact vibe from that scenes, particularly when the ensign are running through the corridor and they are ambushed by the changelings. That was brutal. Yes. But I really like Amanda Plummer. Vatic it's amazing. I mean, she really excelled on that character, and I know what you mean about it being like a little bit of a cartoon villain type of character, but you need that goofiness to make the character more appealing in a way, which I think it's a really smart move, because you came from episode 7 when she was really, really dark, and she was showing us a complete different face of Starfleet and what they did with the changelings. So in this in this episode, and she was full of herself, to be honest with you. She was with the upper hand. She was enjoying the moment and waiting to get her hands on Jack. But all in all, I love the episode. Oh my God, Marina. Oh my God. Having her back, it was like, whew. Yeah. But the whole episode with this like small compartments. The small scenes between a group of characters like Riker and Troy, Picard and Jack and Beverly, and oh my God, Sidney LaForge. We had to talk about Sidney LaForge. What a character! Oh my God, Ashley is an amazing actress, and but yeah, all in all, I love the episode, and I cannot wait to see how things develop.
Yeah, definitely seeing how, like, obviously we're seeing new things, new storylines, and just a whole bunch of emotions gathered throughout the whole entire episode, through the series for that matter. And Jay, were there any standout moments to you? Were there any lines or little things that you saw or observed that you really, felt?
Yeah, so many good things. So many like one-liners that really hit. Get off my bridge. Oh.
No.
Oh my God. I'm like, yes. I like stood up. I'm like, get them off that bridge. Just that line was awesome. Yeah. 7. Yeah. And her standing up and finally saying to Shaw, like, I'm 7 of 9. My name is 7 of 9.
Come on.
Yeah. That's right. You tell them. My favorite part, though, was how they treated the integration, bringing Data back in. And I was wondering how they were going to do that, because I was just like, the thing that really made me feel awesome was having Geordi back, because what hurt for me, and I like the episodes in season 1 without Geordi. It just didn't. I felt the emotion, and when they were kind of unplugging Data and he was leaving again, right? Geordi wasn't there for his first death. Geordi wasn't there for his second death, right?
Yes.
I mean, Geordi, and to me, they were in TNG. They had the best chemistry. Whenever they were in an episode together, I felt like Data became more human through interactions with Geordi than anyone else. And so having him have that, having Geordi, having Lore mess with Geordi in episode 7, right? While Sydney and Jack are in danger, and he's dropping the force fields and stuff, and seeing Geordi's emotion come out and try to plead with the Data in the other partition. And then to this episode where Geordi did, LeVar Burton is amazing. Just did like his acting in this episode where he's not even. We see what's happening in the limbo in the world with him, but obviously the characters don't see that. So we see that, but he's looking at a screen with like red dot or blue dots turning into red dots,
red.
And then and then when the last red dot or the last blue dot turns red, and he says "damn," and you see in his face he's lost his friend again, and like he said that several times in the season where he's like, I can't do this, I can't lose him again, and that got me this episode, and you can feel the pain.
You can
feel the pain. And then on the other end, after all that stuff has happened and they're talking, you feel the friendship, you almost lost your friend, all that kind of stuff. So that really was my favorite part of this episode.
Well, and what's great is LeVar Burton, we don't even know that he had dots on the screen when he was doing that.
Yeah.
Oh my God, you're right.
He may have been looking at a blank blue screen and just
That's
emoting.
totally right.
And they're like, Data's being taken over, and he's just gonna act that.
That's totally right. Here's the script would just say that, like, Data's leaving, and he's like, okay, yeah.
And it's something that just came to my mind. I mean, that scene when Geordi and Data are talking about their friendship, you can draw a parallelism between that and the death of Spock in The Wrath of Khan. I mean, I have been, and I will shall be your friend. Come on.
That's good. Yeah.
That was mind blowing.
Well, and there's something powerful as I, because I struggled with this, like the bringing of the Data back, and they hit on this in the episode when Picard says to him, like, last time I saw you, you wanted to die. I hope I haven't dishonored your wish, And I thought about that, and also just like, obviously he's older, and they came up with the reason why he looks older. And so now looking at it as it's played out, I'm like, what an interesting idea that, these characters will have lost Data for 30 years or 20 years, however long it's supposed to have been. And now they're re-encountering Data, and he's old like them now. So it's which it feels right. It might even be weird. I know it's a technological issue, but like if Brent Spiner did look like 20 years ago, it might be weird that he was with them and like they're older, and it might be like,
it's just like
yeah.
So like there is a poetry to it, and we obviously don't know how it's going to end, but there is something beautiful to that. And again, it almost felt like, oh wow, this is a natural continuation of their adventures. Because they were out there for years together, and then Data did die and everything, but now he's back, and it's weird, but we've seen a lot of weird shit out there, and this is just sort of a part of that,
Yes.
Well, they brought him back without using Genesis device, so it's not that weird.
They didn't shoot him out. They didn't shoot him out into a planet in a torpedo.
And he's gonna regrow. Yeah, it was some planet made of some type of neural positronic net or some type of cyber planet. It's so interesting that you bring that up, and Daniel, and you've alluded to this about the dots and everything like that. Watching that whole entire scene and sequence, I'm equating it because, and this is just me, that the parallel comparison between that scene and his battle against Lore, which obviously playing. Let's just go back on that for a second. In the previous episode 7, the way that Data, Brent Spiner, amazing acting, just phenomenal at being to change and switch over from Data to Lore and Lore to Data again.
Oh, he sold that scene. Yeah.
Just switching back between those two roles, amazing, and it would just seem so fluid and natural, and I love the way that he did that. But in this episode, when they were switching back and forth, obviously we see Lore basically getting the upper hand on Data, and I kind of love the way that whole scene played out, because I'm like, oh, I saw this in the last Matrix film. Basically, Neo gave himself up to get rid of his other half, which was Agent Smith. And I'm saying
that you just called it the last Matrix film.
The last Matrix.
I appreciate that very much, that you're referring to the third Matrix film as the last Matrix. I am not disagreeing, and we're just going to accept that definition.
Yes.
Yeah, we're not. Yeah,
to me, it's still
okay. So I know what you're.
I haven't seen the fourth one, so
that is
the last one for me.
There's only
that's like we don't
movie, and I'm gonna die.
Oh my god! I you know what? That's just me and my age. I'm like, I forgot about that other one, but we don't talk about that one.
Like earlier this year, right? Or last year.
Oh my
That's great.
bad to the studios. But that whole scene was just like that. Like, man, I feel bad. Now you put me in place about that one. There goes
No,
here
no, no. But
goes
you're right. You're right to draw the parallel, and in a way, I actually think this was much more clear. I mean, with the Matrix Revolutions, which I enjoyed, it was never clear in that movie exactly what happened. It's sort of like people had to talk about it, and the directors talked about it, and you got to understand. This was a really well done. Even when they were doing it, I kind of was suspecting, like when he's giving him the memories, and I'm like,
yes.
if he's taking
Yeah, same.
those and he's keeping those, isn't that all data? I mean, in a weird sort of
That's,
way, isn't
that's
data
implanting
just
himself
memories
into him.
right
Yeah,
now?
Data said that. These
what
are,
else?
yeah, he did say that. Data
So
said, "This is me." Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love that. And it's great because it's both in a science fiction plot way, it's great, but then also sort of emotionally as for people, right? Because data is all about trying to be human. You ask yourself, well, what does it mean to be human? And one answer to that is that you're a collection of your memories and your experiences, right? And so to embody that in that scene, it's really beautiful and it's really moving.
Yeah.
Have you guys
The
watched
way the whole scene was played out.
the Ready Room? Have you seen the Ready Room?
Not
The
for this
interview?
episode, not yet.
Not for this. Yeah, not this one.
Not for this episode.
Okay, go and watch it because Brent Spiner talked about this. I mean, how
Oh,
they shoot
great,
the
yeah.
scene. It's really good. It's really.
I
good.
also love in the Ready Room, and I think because this is the same episode, they do a little featurette on Riker and Troy's relationship, like throughout TNG.
Yes,
and I love it because I remember on the internet, on Twitter, maybe like a couple of years ago, like I think maybe after the first season of Picard, there was this meme going around. It's like Riker and Troy are the first television description of like an open relationship or a polyamorous relationship, right? Because like they're clearly in love and they're like together and they clearly like go on dates, but then they're also always just like with whoever, and they explain in the video, like, essentially the writers didn't want us to have a relationship, but we were acting like we had a relationship. So we would sort of just fight the writers, and every time we could, we would like hold hands or we'd give a little look or something. And eventually they just had to give in and let us get married, And seeing them back, I felt like in those scenes with them in the prison cell, there was a little bit of distance between them.
Great scene.
And I think that's probably in reality because she moved away, like they've been talking in interviews, like they probably haven't seen each other in the real world as often as maybe some of the other cast, right?
Yeah.
But then also in the story, there's this idea that there's a distance, and and this is really delicate. Like he mentions, like, oh, you suppressed my grief, right? Because you couldn't bear it. And then you think about, so was she doing that in Picard season 1? Like when we saw them and he's making the pizza, was she sort of suppressing his grief? And is he, not that I have no issue with the making of the pizza, but is his sort of Mr. Dad sort of thing almost her?
Yeah.
She's sort of making him what she needs him to be. Like, there's this sort of telepathic manipulation. They're almost implying that, right? That is a part of this, and that's the distance they have. That this betrayal he feels, this emotional betrayal, right?
So you're saying she's Professor X?
A little bit.
The same ability?
A little bit. I mean, not exactly, but it's a similar idea, right? That her empathic and telepathic powers, which have clearly grown, right, over time, that they're married and they're close, and she is able to influence him, and she can abuse that, right, out of a place of need and not a malevolent place, but that can cause problems in their marriage. I think that's a great idea.
I love that line that she said about having to bring it back and be the roots of a counselor is to bring it back to healing in that whole scene. And I think she basically understood that. And I love the trade-off of conversation between them both. It is like you are watching an actual couple. Like you almost saw as if in real life Jonathan Frakes and Marina Sirtis probably had an actual relationship. You know what I mean? I'm not trying to say that they actually did have one in real life, but it's almost as if they played it off so naturally in the back and forth between them, kind of also jabbing at each other and whatnot, until you see Worf come in and be like,
"Oh my god,
I loved that! I love that so much!
Oh my god!
Hey, can we talk about the
hard?
The two entrances. Worf has had the two best entrances, character entrances this season.
Yes, he has.
Well, he had that other great line where he says, I've often thought of I've killed many enemies, and I've often wanted to send you all their heads. I will say this. Worf has he's sort of been reduced to humor, comic relief this season, but I've loved every bit of it. So it's hard for me. I can't really complain. He's been a badass. He's cracked jokes. Like, that's it. This is where we need from our Worf.
And it's been consistent with his characters. He's got the best one-liners.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
It's like you just can't go beyond that. I think the writing on that sense, in that aspect, has just been so great. And
the
obviously,
thing that really sell that is seen is Jonathan Frakes' face.
He's like him and Worf. That was
no, cut it out. No, inappropriate.
That's John. Like Riker was like there. He's like, bro, I'm right here.
Right?
Don't you see? I'm right here.
You're
like
the
chemistry
in my face.
The chemistry between those two characters, like it was like they just turned it right back on, because like you remember from the pimple scene, he's like, it's not, remember
Insurrection?
Insurrection.
Yeah,
He's
I
like,
love Insurrection.
it's noticeable. And it was like,
It's not a pimple, it's the gorge. The gorge.
That's right. It's the gorge. It's not even noticeable, and that's like the kind of banter that came right back, and it was like, oh, you just turned it right back on. Like, I just saw you guys again. It was great.
Yeah, in First Contact, when Riker said, "Do you remember how to fire a phaser?"
and when they're walking around Daystrom, and he's like, "How come you don't hit back?" You don't used to hit back anymore. I was just like, "Oh yes, more of that." That's great.
And then he said, in that one episode, when they're just about to go to Daystrom, he's like, Worf says, like, I've become more of a pacifist. And then right just as when they were about to teleport, says, we're all gonna die.
Great
so great, so great.
Oh,
and it just speaks to the longevity behind these characters and how well they've just meshed together as a whole big family. They're able to bring that and carry over into 30 years later into the series, and it's just so amazing to watch them and their chemistry. What did you guys think about that scene with Raffi battling it out with the changelings? I'm like, come on.
I didn't really care. I hate to say that.
Oh,
but
wow. Okay.
It felt like just action for action's sake. Like, I noticed there was some ADR. I think Seven's like, okay, we need you, Doc. Yeah. And they had to record that line because the next shot was going to be Raffi in the hallway. And there was no reason for Raffi to be in the hallway. So they just threw that in there. But I mean, I like Raffi, and I like that they've paired her with Worf. Because if any character feels like they need discipline, it's Raffi, and if any character sort of can provide discipline, it's Worf.
It's Worf,
and that's great. But I also don't know that, just science fiction genre movies in general have this trope that anybody can be a badass if they learn some moves and they have a couple of swords in their hands, And it's not that anybody can't be a badass, right? But I prefer a little more development of why this particular person is now Bruce Lee. That's all I think.
Yeah, was it? You don't think that maybe the development of Worf being able to train her in any of the previous episodes kind of played into that, kind of helped her develop into that part?
And it's probably just maybe the sort of the screen time and the fact that you got different directors and it's been a few episodes since that, and we only ever really saw them fight with the Vulcan gangsters. It doesn't quite feel. I think and I don't know if they shot stuff and deleted, but I'll give this to Raffi. Her character's definitely been neglected. As cool as it is to pair her with Worf, even if you compare it to the other two seasons of Picard, you're getting very little Raffi. So you can imagine she's been training maybe on their shuttle, whatever, this whole time. But we've had whole episodes without Worf and Raffi. You know, at least two that I could think of, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know if there was intention that they would be in every episode, and it's sort of things changed, or if it just felt that it wasn't necessary. But it didn't, for me, it didn't feel like a culmination of her story arc. I haven't felt, maybe since the first couple episodes, it doesn't feel like she has a strong story arc running through the season like some of the other characters do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Jay, were there any other standout moments to you that you wanted to add in or chime in on as well too, that you can remember? I know it's just a recent episode because there's just a lot. There's just a lot to take in this season. So it's a lot to talk about, and that's why we're having this podcast, because it's so much to talk. I could put this into an article, but just discussing it helps to kind of pick the little details. Yeah. Yes, pick the little details that obviously we can discuss.
I mean, I like a little action schlock. That was some good action schlock with her at the end there kicking butt. Look, it's part of the rising action. You know, everything started with all that stuff that was going on and blowing Vatic out the airlock and all that stuff. We got to keep the action going a little bit. I get it. It's cool. My wife loved it, and we all stood up and we were just like, yeah, kick some ass. Just like, I mean. And then coming down from that high, I'm like, they were changelings. They could have totally like changed into something else, or, aren't they like, or are they changelings or something? I'm not sure.
Why do knives kill changelings? I had that same thought.
I'm not sure what's going on. So, but I got caught up in the moment. I really enjoyed it. I think the other scene that stood out, I think that, or unless you guys want to keep talking about that, go for it. Sergio.
Go ahead.
Go for it.
I'm only gonna say that they were the laziest changeling ever, because they never changed form.
I was like, when are they gonna?
There's the one time when they disappear into the turbo lift. That was awesome last week.
That was awesome.
They shoot and then they come back. That was great.
Yeah, that was.
I'm surprised about that in that scene where we can rewind back to the last episode. They now have handheld phasers that fire at interval shots instead of one solid stream. So I'm wondering, if you have those shots in between, how come they couldn't have a phaser where they have one continuous shot?
Worf has that. Worf is carrying. What's cool?
He has a smaller one. Yeah, he has.
He's carrying a Nemesis phaser.
Nemesis
That's what, to me, the
phaser,
coolest part is, which is like, it's as if somebody was walking around with like a 30-year-old gun. Like I don't use the new guns, the modern guns. I need the classic. And I just love that Worf is like, it's like he's carrying a 6-shooter. He's like, I don't go in for the new phaser. I have the classic phaser. I've been using this phaser for 30 years. It's never let me down. I have no reason to change it. Like, I love that.
Same reason he has to. Broken. Yeah, same reason he has to put holes in the La Sirena with the knife. So there's that. We stop putting holes into my ship. Every time you're gonna make a point, let's stop putting holes in my ship. Another great banter between those two.
That is so good. You know what? I was just thinking about this right now. I think it was a tragic scene to lose Lieutenant Tavine.
Oh, I was gonna go there. Yep, that's what I was gonna go to.
That was so much. Hard. That was so much tension going into that, and having the consequences shown. Jack didn't show up in a timely manner within the 10 minutes, but obviously there was that reason that Picard and Beverly were trying to tell him to stay back, because that's what they want to get. They want to get him. You're not going to allow somebody to get to the main weapon that you have and obviously cause this mass destruction. So I think there was a reason, and I forgot her name, the name of the actress. I could look this up. Stephanie, and I don't want to butcher her last name.
Yeah.
I don't want to butcher her last name. So we, with respect to Stephanie, I just want to mention her name. Props to her from the get-go, from day one. Being the awesome. Vulcan, that was the Vulcan science officer that was killed. I think it's just ironic that we have a science Vulcan officer that was killed, because obviously the famous science Vulcan officer that we all know was Leonard Nimoy's Spock. So I just thought that that was kind of ironic in a way, to have that portrayed. But I loved the way that shot was done and edited, because as Vatic killed Lieutenant Tavine, she looked directly at Seven,
Yeah.
and Seven being for an XB, an ex Borg. I don't know. It was just me nitpicking on little details, or me just thinking, expanding on what the possibilities are. But maybe she knew something about Seven being ex Borg, and if that could be a thing about tying into her character, because she's obviously aware of Jack and Jack's abilities. She saw it right through Lieutenant Mira's eyes. She's like, Jack, is that you, Jack? Are you there? So she knows something about Jack's abilities and why she wants to retrieve him for somebody else. So all in all, it's just, I love the way that scene was portrayed, and the way that eye contact was made with Seven, and you could see Seven's reaction on that.
Well, they
You
set
could
up
feel
that scene at the beginning where, and they I like that they pointed out, because he tells her to blow the turbo lift. She doesn't do it, right?
Yeah.
And that allows them to take the bridge. And he's like, you should have blown turbo. I was trying to save your life. And he's like, well, yeah, except, basically he's like, well, we're all going to die because you didn't blow the turbo lift, and Tavine dies because you didn't blow the turbo lift, essentially, right?
Yep.
And the captain is like, well, I would have rather died. I would have been the one to die and die taking them out, and Seven probably has more growth in this episode as like an officer, as a Starfleet officer, than she's had, because she makes a command decision.
Yeah.
It doesn't go well. It does cost lives, and they win the day. But I think I would hope
in a costly manner. Yeah.
I would hope that there's a lesson for her to take from this, and like you can't be impulsive. Seven, and it's funny. It's personal growth for her as a character, right? Because she's the ex-Borg and she's calm and she's logical, and now she's making these sort of impulsive emotional decisions, which is great for her. But it's not necessarily great if you want to be in command, right?
Correct.
So she has to sort of find that balance of like, how do I be a leader? How do I use all of my gifts, my intelligence, my passion, my strength, and balance myself so I can be a captain, right? I don't know if they can make her a captain. They awesome.
Hence
they did.
The little speech that Shaw gave to her, saying, you cannot pick those decisions that are honky donkey. You are a Starfleet officer, and there's consequences. Your actions.
Picard even added to the growth of her character, and the urge for her to go into battle, because she's been like that, being Seven in Voyager, and so it was great for her character arc in the first 2 seasons of Picard to be a Fenris Ranger, because you didn't have to operate within the bounds and rules of Starfleet.
Yeah,
you could do whatever you wanted and act on her own. Now that she has that uniform on, she is still acting consistent with her character. She is still being Seven and making these really rash choices, and I don't know if she's given some thought to the consequences are, and Shaw reminds her of that. That there are consequences of these decisions that she has to make. So I agree with you that she's bold, and having to deal with those and making a captain could be problematic. Could be problematic with her, as even Picard had told her. She said, "How do I be myself, but and also deal with an a-hole like Shaw?" And Picard had just has that response for her. When you find that answer out, will you let me know?
Let me know.
So knowing Picard, he's operated he's kind of had to also bend the rules of Starfleet, which may also allude to why Picard himself has kind of skirted and break the rules of the Prime Directive as well too. So
and for me that scene works perfectly, because they have an opportunity to kill what we are called a red shirt, because there were 2 other ensigns standing there, but they choose to kill. Yes, but they choose to kill
a standing character.
One of the main characters or a bridge crew.
Of the bridge, yeah.
Yes, to make Seven realize that, okay, this is the direct consequence of your action. I mean, the impact is bigger on her that it was some unknown ensign.
Yeah, and I suspect we will see one more character beat with Seven this season where she has to make a choice, some sort of difficult choice. She's probably going to do it right, because I think that makes sense. But I feel like this is both. It's a great moment, but it's also it's helping set up, I think, something maybe for her and for Shaw. And I don't think that's resolved. When she says I'm 7 of 9, and he doesn't really say anything. Like, it's a great moment, but I feel like there's more there, and those two characters in particular, they really need to come to peace and acceptance with each other. He needs to. I think we're gonna get him. He's gonna call her 7 at some point, right before the end.
He's
gonna
sometime.
acknowledge.
It's always the dynamic between the captain and his number one. I mean, they need to find the middle ground where both can be the captain and the person, and the commander and the person. They need to find that common ground.
I think that's one of my biggest qualms about this episode, because you start to see that there was again, I'm very forgetful of the names of these episodes, so please forgive me. You saw the respect of Commander 7 being able to find and seek out find out the changelings and find out who is basically the perpetrator on the Titan. And Shaw was giving her compliments as to, you can be a great captain one day, which I think, okay, maybe we're having a little slight change of attitude towards 7. But then he goes back and still tries to put her in place, saying you are a Starfleet officer. It's like, okay, great, you don't have to remind me. That's kind of like demeaning to me. And then Commander and still dresses her as Commander Hansen. And Jay, you alluded this to, you had mentioned about that. I am 7 of 9. It's like, I thought we were kind of leaning towards Shaw having this understanding, but I guess he's just that dipshit from Chicago that we're still having to love to hate.
I think
we've come a long way.
Yeah.
We
need a Star Trek legacy. We need a Star Trek legacy to see how that thing is going to develop. Terry Matalas, you listen. We need Star Trek legacy.
We'll try to make it known. After this podcast and everything goes up, we'll try to make it known. So we're trying to push for Star Trek legacy. Hashtag Star Trek legacy. And there are petitions out there. I think there's 2. One, forgot. Regarding the push on that.
Oh yeah. I saw a couple. Yeah.
Sergio, you mentioned Sydney earlier as a great character for this entire season. So let's talk about Sydney and her interaction with Jack. And obviously, any of you can chime in as well. This is open. This is a podcast. We're open discussion. Anything that we can come up with on this episode. That relationship together, she's kind of like in sickbay where Jack is there with Beverly and Picard. She's trying to urge him on and egg him on to be like, tell him what you did. Yeah. It's like I think she was hoping for at that one point, because you see that eye contact with each other and you see that established chemistry between them. So what do you think is going to happen between them? What do any of you think is going to happen between them? What do you think is going? How do you think Sydney has been so far?
Well, I'm all in for Black Rush.
Black Rush, that's it. I was going to say, what's the hashtag for them? Team Black Rush.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, I think I'm not a filmmaker or I'm not in the industry, but I think one of the biggest dream that any producer or director of screenwriter has is like find these two characters that have this amazing chemistry from the get-go. I mean, it's amazing. These two guys were born to play these characters and to have that dynamic between them, because I mean, it's this synergy that it's really hard to find that something that works perfectly, and they are both broken in a way. I mean, they have daddy issues. They, let's call it that way. I mean, and but in a way, I think we have this complementary relationship between them. I mean, one complements the other. I mean, where Jack has this. I mean, this bravado, this thing that he has, like this is kind of. I'm not believing that I'm saying this aloud, but this is kind of Han Solo vibe.
Yeah. It is.
Yes.
You know?
He pulls it
It's
off.
yeah.
There's a lot
I
about
agree.
Jack and her that if you had told me about it before I saw the show, I might have thought it was kind of silly, or like cliche or something.
Yeah.
But the actors are great. By about maybe the third or fourth episode, I was all in on Ed Spellers. And I saw him after that. I saw him in You. I like in the middle of this Picard because he was in You. I went and watched that season, and it was all out. And I loved him in that. And so I was kind of like, I love this guy. He's great. He has all my benefit of the doubt. And I think her character, maybe they started developing her a little later. Like the first few episodes, she was there, but it really feels like maybe these last 3 episodes where you really start to feel her character sort of come out. And I never would have thought I'd be like, yeah, let's up Picard and Beverly's kid and Geordi's kid. They'll get together, whatever. Like I would be like, this is fan fiction, whatever. But like, actually, I'm like, no, I'd be cool with that. Like if you did a show and it was like, I don't want it to be it shouldn't be like too fast, But like I like the chemistry and I like the maybe will they or won't they, whatever you want to call it, right? Like I would totally be in for that show, and I don't know how you do it. What I don't want to see is Jack do the Chris Pine, I'm a captain now thing.
I doubt it. No, I doubt it.
I would totally love seeing him on a ship, like with a real captain and a real first officer, and he's a character on the ship. I'd totally be down for that.
Yeah.
I
think Espelier's, his hatred and defiance in wearing a Starfleet uniform, I think by the end. Now, obviously, I don't know where his character is going and how it might end, but if he does end up being a Starfleet officer, I think it'll be nice to see him in uniform, and carry on that arc. And maybe that is part of the idea of the next generation, being Picard's son. And I say Picard's son, and I could say Beverly's son in addition to that, with some level of skepticism too, because we still don't know where his abilities are coming from. At least not that I can see. And I'm just waiting, I'm just waiting for that reveal. Everybody loves Le Crush, as it's been referred to. But it's wait till Sydney's, I'm just anticipating Sydney knowing like, oh my God, I've been dating like a liquid prosciutto all this time. If she is some type of changeling, it's like, I haven't changed. I haven't done anything. Liquid prosciutto, that's what I'm calling it.
Liquid prosciutto.
Kind of look like that this season a little bit. Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
I have a question. I have a question really quick about
Clado.
Clado. Yeah. Did you notice that the few changelings we saw change in form, they release like a vapor when they change form? Do you notice that?
No, I didn't notice that.
But,
I think
but maybe they do.
But I'll look again. Yeah.
I mean, I was surprised by that because they never did that before. I mean,
let's be fair. The changelings in Deep Space Nine are rendered at 720 by 480 with like no texturing. Like, I don't know that we can be like, well, how come it doesn't look like 90s video game graphics? I don't want to go there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, they did the CGI here. They did put a little elements of kind of that old school, like too much shine kind of thing.
Yes.
I had a friend that worked for Disney. He's like, we put a lot of shine on because the director always wants shine, and it just never looks real. But anyway, yeah, they have some elements of when they're changing. There's a lot of this shiny, and I'm like, oh, that reminds me of the '90s CGI that was there. Nice little nod.
seeing Terry Metalis tweets, every now when I can catch them, somebody had asked them why they do look different this season compared to what was seen in Deep Space Nine, and obviously, the most obvious answer is because times have changed, technology has gotten better, blah blah blah. But as far as why they look the way they do now is yet to be addressed. Do you guys think?
Yeah.
There was an explanation this season, or do you think we're still waiting for it?
I think they did explain it because these are all results of experiments. So they've been modified, by Section 31
like super
Starfleet.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we don't really know.
That's why Vatic dies the way she did. Yeah.
They disintegrated. Yeah. They only disintegrate when you dissect them way down to their body. The organs and stuff. That's like how changed they've become.
Yeah, and just that whole scene of how she dies, again, visually striking. Daniel, cool. that was Terminator. She got frozen and just
well, I loved her line, that fucking solids line.
Reference.
Yes. That was a great line. That was a great line. Yes. I was like, yep.
And again, I'm watching it and I don't, even as she says that, I'm thinking, well, I'm not going to kill her. This is episode 8. I'm not going to kill her. Like in my mind, and then it's like, I'm like, oh shit. Okay. Yeah.
They did.
And they did. It was like a long enough death that you're kind of like able to process it as it's happening. Right? Like first she's shot out and you're like, well, no. And then she hits the thing. You're like, oh, and then she breaks. And I'm like, oh, well, she's going to come back. And then they blow the ship up. And I'm like, oh,
for a second there, I was like, all those ice pieces for a second there, like all those ice pieces are going to hit that deflector dish and it's going to melt. And then she's going to come back together and she's back. I was like,
I was waiting for that. I was thinking, what if the evolution was that strong that she would eventually come back together again? Is that gonna happen? I was afraid, like maybe they pulled a little joke on us and I'd be like, no, just kidding. She just meshes again together. What did you guys think about that whole scene where the bridge basically just opened up and be like,
I loved that it actually establishes that in this show, that is
There's no windows?
Screen, not a window.
There's no windows?
Because that's not a window. It's a portal, and maybe it's a hologram, like it's a holographic screen. That's why you get the effect of it, which is great. And again, the window never made sense because like we saw in Nemesis, when if it impacts and it breaks, the last thing you want is that to just be a glass window. You'd like some armored plating there,
Yes, exactly.
I almost thought it was an homage to, certain episodes in The Next Generation, and even featured in, I think, some of the Kelvin Timeline movies, where they would open hangar bays, or cargo bays for that matter, and they would the crew would hold on to something. Or shield them from any type of, so basically being sucked out, depressurized is the correct word, depressurized.
I'm a big Enterprise fan, and in the Borg episode of Enterprise, which is a great episode, they do that to the Borg on the ship. They open the airlock doors.
Depressurizing.
Exactly.
So I think that was just one way to incorporate. That's how I saw it. I was like, oh, that was a very genius way of adding another addition to a ship. You haven't seen before.
I love that stuff. I love seeing secret things about ships that do things. Like I was really hoping for more like secure protocols, like how they quickly, how the changelings quickly got on the bridge. I was like, why did they get there so quickly? Like in the Next Generation, there was like lockout things and all these things, and I was waiting for those things, and they're just like, oh, we're here, we took over, But that scene really reminded me. That opening where they open the emergency opening, it just reminded me of I think it was the Wrath of Khan, where they're on the Kobayashi Maru and the simulation ends, and then the front
and it opens up. That's right.
Yes. And I was like, oh, it opens up. It opened up just like that. I was like, is Kirk coming through? No.
Okay.
And also her death remind me of what was the name of the character in Beyond? Kral.
Yeah.
It was similar because and then they were both in space. I mean, Kroll was being eaten by this
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
stuff, and but yeah, I had a similarity there. But for me, the best part of the whole scene was Seven screaming, not saying, screaming, fire with all that rage. That was
energy.
Oh, mind blowing, man.
And then the beauty shot,
very good.
the beauty shot of the Titan as the Shrike just explodes. And just like, oh yeah.
You wanted to see that happen. That was fulfilling on that part. I know we're running on an hour and 30 minutes here into the podcast. I guess let's just discuss our last two talking points. But the thing about Marina Sirtis, Deanna Troy's character, obviously she has these abilities. She's an empath, and now she's getting into Jack's head. What are we looking at there? What do you think we're anticipating for, any possible theories on that or thoughts?
What a great way to use her. Just like with all the other characters that they've brought in slowly, right? Geordi, Worf, they bring her in at a time when there's a purpose, there's a role for her in the story. And the fact that she hasn't been in the story yet works, because she hasn't been around Jack. If she'd been around Jack at the beginning, she could have been like, there's a darkness here. And, we could have done all this 8 episodes ago. But the nature of the structure, she wasn't there. And so
it would have been a movie. It would have been a movie.
Would have been an episode of TNG, actually. I said something. And they're like, no, he's fine. He's like, no, I sense a darkness. No, you're crazy. That would have been TNG. Fortunately, now it's like, there's been enough killing that she shows up and she's like, there's a darkness. Everyone's like, no, we totally believe you. We totally believe there's a darkness. Let's get to the heart of this. Let's figure out what's going on. Why don't you sit with him? Why don't you sense him and see what's up? And I love that.
I don't know if you guys seen those memes on the internet where it brings up some of these like loophole tropes or loops in the storylines, and then all of a sudden somebody proposes a resolution to the whole plot, and then it just ends with the credits and the Enterprise D just flying by. That's what it feels like. If Deanna Troy were there in the beginning, that's what it would have felt like.
It'd be done.
So thoughts on?
I have no idea. I'd love to hear if you guys have theories. Like I've been looking at this imagery. I have no idea what this red door is.
I was watching the end credits Thursday because there are so much Easter eggs. I mean, there's so many Easter eggs there. Yeah. And there is one part that caught my eye. Do you remember? I think it was on episode 3. Yes, in 17 seconds, when Shaq was playing with this straw, and he made the symbol. That symbol.
Yes.
It's on the end credits. I mean, at the very end. And if you freeze that is seen, that's 5 seconds of the end credits, you're gonna see that symbol coming out of something that looks like a wormhole.
Yeah.
What am I getting into?
You think it's
the pod rights? The pod rights. The pod wraith. Sorry, the pod wraith.
All right.
Yeah. I don't know. This is my recent theory.
Look, if there was even a chance that Avery Brooks would come back, I would actually give it a lot of weight, because I feel like it'd be a cool way to bring him in, and it could be a story, and you even set up maybe more story, But I don't know how you do the Prophets without Avery.
Without him, I don't know. That's why. I mean, that's the weak point of my theory. But, and here's the cool part. On the last the Ready Room, Will Wheaton said that he cannot announce his next guest because it's going to be like a major spoiler. So, I mean,
we're totally getting somebody big.
Big, yes. Yeah. Something big is coming. So I don't know.
I think we're going to get Dr. Bashir personally. because we got a kid here with some sort of condition. If it's something we discover that is related to the wormhole or the gamma quadrant or whatever, he's a doctor with that experience. And I also feel like, we had Tim Russ, right? Like we've had these like sort of ancillary actors, and he's around, and he kind of looks more or less like he did. He's older, like it feels right. But there are others too. I mean, there are so many characters that
it could be
show
Nana.
up.
It could be Nana. We don't know. Yep.
I honestly cannot even think of any theories. I just thinking about that whole red door this entire season. Obviously, doors are a symbol. Doors have been constantly used as a symbol in movies and TV, and I can only think of what that door means. And if you said it could be a portal, in essence, if we're talking Trek, a wormhole. Could be, because we haven't. That's one Easter. That's one thing from the credits that we haven't seen being used yet in the entire show.
Exactly.
We now see from this episode the reveal of those red and white dots, which is the neural map of Data's brain, Laura and Data. So I have no theories to this point at all.
What really puzzled me is that what the changes want with the parietal lobe of Picard's brain.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's the same thing, right? Because what they're essentially implying is that whatever they thought was Irumodic syndrome, which is a brain disease, and we don't know what it is, but whatever that was, maybe it was something else. And we know that Jack has the same thing that presumably he received genetically from Picard. So what is it? Like, what is the disease that he actually had if it wasn't that syndrome? Is it something that he contracted in the show, right? Like is it something that we saw and he contracted? Because we know he didn't, when Beverly examines him in All Good Things, right, in the present day, she's like, I see some things. It could be Irumodic one day, but we don't know. And it was very much left like a possibility, right? So clearly it wasn't something he had before that. So is it something he encountered in space that infected him, something, and that is now in... I totally get that it's in Jack now, and maybe we just need Jack because Picard's dead and the body's dead, and so it's useless to us because, it needs to be alive, Totally get that. But I am really curious, like, what is this thing? I'm really hoping it's not dumb. I'm hoping it makes sense. I don't know if you guys watch the Red Letter Media guys. But they're like, we like this, but there's a couple of things here that could be dumb. Like, we don't know, and it's like, I hope not, and it's
State of the plate.
Well, especially when you have data on episode 7 saying early diagnosis of Irumodic syndrome are in question.
Are in question, yes.
They questioned it.
Something's weird about that part of his brain. Yeah.
And
which is cool because, that came from All Good Things, which was a possible future, right? And then in Picard season 1, they're kind of like, you've got the Irumodic syndrome, and we all just kind of go, oh, it's just like an All Good Thing, so he's got it.
A continuation.
But it doesn't have to be that, right? There's room in that for like, it's not actually Irumodic syndrome. It's not a betrayal of the actual story we watched, right? It's just like a misdirect off of a possible future that we saw once.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, correct. Overall, thoughts on the episode. It was amazing. Another amazing episode, just well written, and just that last scene of them together in a room at the conference table. I mean, everyone hugging it out. And I leave this podcast on a good note. Just that whole scene just brought everybody back. It was just tears around my face. I was a complete mess after that scene. Having been attached to TNG for so many years, growing up in the Next Generation era, I think for all of us, it's almost fair to say, we've also grown up in that area. I know, Sergio, your time is extended before that from the original series, but just the love and family and that tone you get with everybody during that moment, absolutely great. It almost seemed like they were just, you could probably just let them be, not have it scripted, and let's just let the characters go. You know what I mean? and let's see how they play that out.
Absolutely. I mean, I started my love for Star Trek with TOS, but TNG is my Star Trek. I grew up with TNG, and seeing all of them sitting on that table. I mean, I was in tears before I realized I was in tears, because that how much it meant to me. I mean, it was amazing. I mean, I said earlier today that this season is the love letter to TNG that we're asking for, and that scene, it's the embodiment of that love letter. I mean, Picard saying, "I need all of you." My God, mind blowing. Absolutely.
What a change from season 1 when he was like, "You need help with Worf, Riker, LaForge," and he's like, "No, I can't bring them into this."
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
And then he goes, and then full circle, twist that around, and
and we're like watching season 1. We're like, yeah, you do. And here they are.
Oh, come on, man!
Yeah, please bring them, please. Yeah.
But no.
Any final thoughts? Anything else that we didn't address that you guys wanted to bring up before we wrap it up?
Nothing from me. Live long and prosper.
Yeah.
Long and prosper. I mean, excited to see what the next 2 episodes bring.
Yep.
Oh yeah, I'm anticipating.
A lot of questions to answer still.
I do have to catch up on the Ready Room. I do have to catch up on episodes of the Ready Room, so I have to go back and rewatch those for so many information that I need to, feel completionist in regards to this season and stuff. But I am anticipating. I'm very much looking forward to the next episode, and we should all do this again. We'll definitely get together again and talk about episode 9, and it's only 2 more episodes. So it's like, I don't want it to end. I missed the whole full season when we were back doing 22, 23 episodes, but it's not those times anymore, so we have to accept it for what it is. But as far as everything's concerned so far from this season, I feel satisfied. I feel very satisfied for this 3rd season. I feel satisfied in everything that's done. All criticisms of fan service can go away, just because everything was just done rightfully so.
What was the line that you wrote on Twitter about fan service? What was that?
It was just something. Fan service was just a dedication to the fan service. Is really not fan service. It was just a dedication and tribute to all the fans, and that's all. It's proper tribute. You know what I mean? So with that being said, Daniel, Sergio, Jay, thank you for joining me. I'm your host, Ron, at the Temple of Geek podcast. For anybody who is interested in interacting with you guys on social, where can we find you at? Jay, where can we find you?
Find me
if you want to put your social out there, it's optional.
Yeah. No, you can't. You can find me at JR Aguda, JAYRAGUDA. At JR Aguda, JAYRAGUDA.
You can find me on Twitter, Daniel Noah 5. There's no H in Noah, so otherwise it's all pretty straightforward.
Go.
And you can hit me on Twitter and Instagram at Sergio A Rojo. It's A, letter A. This is my middle name. Whatever you can. And Ron, thank you for having me today. It was a pleasure. I mean, geeking out with my friends is a dream come true. So thank you so much.
So good.
Yeah, live long and prosper to all of you. Again, thank you very much for joining me. I am Ron. You can find me at that one nerd Ron on Twitter and Instagram. Feel free to hit me up and ask any questions. But until next week, we shall do this again. And thank you guys for joining me on the Temple of Geek podcast. For your listeners out there, join us next week, and we will be discussing episode 9 of this 3rd season of an amazing Star Trek Picard. Thank you very much, and we're beaming out.
Please follow us on Twitter at Temple of Geek. Follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/Temple of Geek. And remember to visit templeofgeek.com, your one stop for all things geek.
Goodbye.
This will conclude our transmission.